Hi there, my name is Steve Farrington, and I am an author. I decided to start reading some of my stuff aloud, just for the heck of it, and basically get some feedback, see what people think, and encourage people to check out my book. It's called Rodrigo's Land. I have another one I'm working on called Leonardo's Letter. Basically, my genre is historical fiction, especially kind of gay historical fiction. All right. So this novel is about, well, you'll have to listen and find out. But it's basically about a fictional member of Christopher Columbus's crew who was gay, and I did a lot of research for it. So anyway, you can find it through Amazon. It's you can get an ebook very easily. You can also order a copy of it, paper copy. Just Google Rodrigo's Land and my name, Stephen Farrington. So I'm going to do some videos for this. I'm also going to do some videos for Leonardo's Letter. With Leonardo's Letter, basically I'm going to be doing asking for feedback and kind of be a teaser. And this is also kind of a teaser. However, if people really like it, I'll keep reading and encouraging people to maybe order my book or get it through Amazon somehow or the e-reader. You can get it on Kindle. And it's basically a way of supporting an artist if you pick up a copy of it. Okay, on Kindle it's $2.99, and yeah. Anyway, with no further ado, I'll start reading. And if you like this, please subscribe, and also please like and share. Okay. So again, here you have Rodrigo's Land. Here's a prologue. My heart has become capable of every form. It is a pasture for gazelles, and a convent for Christian monks, and a temple for idols and the pilgrim's Kaaba, and the tables of the Torah and the book of the Quran. I follow the religion of love. Whatever way love's camels take, that is my religion and my faith. That's a quote from Ibn Arabi, interpreter of Ardent Desires. Here's a prologue. Bartolome's Journal, June 1514. I buried Rodrigo today. They sent him to me, and I didn't want to hear what the old man had to say. He sat at my side for 40 days, teaching and telling, just not the whole truth. Now I sit here by his grave, my uncle's all-revealing letter in my hand. I breathe in the salty air and try to ignore the blazing heat, as well as the pain that comes from knowing too much, yet somehow not enough. It's only now that I suspect what it was the old rascal came back to tell me and why. The wind plucks the letter and carries it toward the shore. I look off in the distance of the vast, crystal blue sea that some now call El Caribe, and I know how he gave me the very thing I needed most. He gave me back my memory. He gave me back myself. Chapter 1. Eastern Cuba, April 1514. You need to think about what you are doing here, said Fray Pedro de Cordova. Bartolome knew the reason for this visit. They were unhappy with him for owning Indian slaves. He studied Brother Pedro's face, which was cold as his icy blue eyes, though Bartolome had seen him break into a broad grin before, even while reading something as serious as St. Augustine. Today the monk was not smiling. Your latest correspondence reveals your great rhetorical skills, but it shows a bias against our cause, one for which you also would work, had you a Christian soul. From the corner of the room, Bartolome's parrot squawked and rocked on his brown driftwood perch by the study's window. As he looked out of this, the younger man felt relieved that there were no workers in the field at the moment. Sorry about the alarm. It had been several months since his last letter to the brothers of the Dominican order in Santo Domingo, and his mind strained to remember. What was so bad it brought them to his estate on another island? Friar Pedro leaned across Bartolome's desk. The old monk was dressed, as were the others, in a coarse black habit and thin rope sandals, an olive wood cross hanging from the hemp band at his waist. His graying black hair had just been shorn, as was Bartolome's, You'll have fewer fleas that way when you spend 6 weeks at sea, his father used to tease. Bartolome sank back into his creaky, leather-backed chair. Don't you know that the Indian is a rational being? Fray Pedro said, lecturing him as if he were a wise teacher with all the answers. He is born free and has dignity, Bartolome. Dignitas! He slammed his fist on the desk, knocking over Bartolome's candelabra and scattering old cold quills over a disorganized collection of letters and quills. Knocking over Bartolome's candelabra and scattering cold candles over a disorganized collection of letters and quills. It was a hot day, even for this part of the world, which some called the Mundus Novus, a kind of new world, or simply the Indias. The briny, tropical breeze from the window helped a bit, but the air still felt stifling in this house of white stone and red tiles that Bartolome had once hoped would remind him of a Mediterranean villa. What my brother means, said Fray Bernardo, gently placing a wrinkled hand on Fray Pedro's shoulder and rebuking him with a look, is that perhaps we could talk about what's to be done about saving the Indians. Bernardo seemed the frailest of the three monks, a graying, balding old man who was thin as a reed, but whose black eyes sparkled with a youth that defied his advanced age. Yes, said Brother Francisco, the third monk, a stout man with light blonde hair. He scratched his tonsured head and frowned. You have heard of the sermons of Father Montesinos, have you not? He furrowed his bushy brow like a professor at Salamanca. I have, Bartolome replied, tenting his fingers and trying to think. We correspond, but it is hard to send missives from such an isolated place as this, and not all of them make it through. There are far too many pirates and storms off the Cuban coast. Montesinos. The man was a force of nature, the voice of Christ in the desert, as he loved to boast. Bartolome thought of when he'd seen him preach in the Iglesia Mayor of Santo Domingo, his voice thundering out from the pulpit over the humble flock, which consisted mostly of a motley crew of sailors, soldiers, and petty bureaucrats. Tell me by what right of heaven or earth you hold these Indians in such a cruel and horrible servitude, he had bellowed, the sweat pouring down his wide forehead and aquiline nose. On what authority have you waged such detestable wars against these people, who lived quietly and peacefully in their own lands? Vanities of vanities, what do you gain from the toil of your slaves under the sun? That day, upon taking the sacrament, Bartolome had prayed Montesinos hadn't heard about the Taino Indian slaves who worked on his encomienda, whom one could observe from this very study, often wearing nothing but the cotton loincloths Bartolome had insisted they wear for modesty's sake. He had almost expected the Dominican to deny him the host and wine out of spite. Montesinos was but a member of the Ordo Predicarum, the order of the preachers of the Dominicans, but he had friends in high places. He hadn't meddled with any part of Bartolome's life, the encomienda, which was a payment of sorts, or his ordination. What could he be up to now? Sweat began to dot Bartolome's forehead and dampen his robe. He found himself staring at a green lizard on the cracked wall of his study as the blond monk droned on. The unannounced visit by these three holy brothers kept him from lunch, and his stomach growled in protest. Outside, a coqui frog began his song, which Bartolome thought odd, as the sun was out. Perhaps a storm was brewing. And do you agree with Montesinos' reasoning? The Dominican demanded, pulling Bartolome's attention once again to the present. The monk arched his bushy blond eyebrows at him before glancing nervously at the birds stalking this way and that on his gnarled perch. Well, speak! Bartolome suddenly wished that he were anywhere else. A novice, he had come to the New World as a doctrinero a dozen years before, hoping to spread his faith among the Indians. He thought of his slaves. Wasn't he slow to anger, quick to forgive, only seldom resorting to the whip? Did not the Indians accept the holy faith easily from his lips? Yes, they still buried statues to make the yucca grow, and hung icons of Mary around their necks to help in childbirth, but even so. And the good deeds he had done over the years, hadn't he taken in those shipwrecked sailors the year before last? Guantanamo Bay could be such a wretched and dangerous place, especially during the season of high winds. He thought of the pig the men had roasted that night, how it had turned and turned on the spit as it roasted and charred, almost black. Bartolome, do you not believe that the Indians are rational men with souls? Asked Brother Francisco. They're dying and going straight to hell if we don't reach them before the soldiers do. If it pleased God to put his children here, then it is up to us to do everything we can to save them. Don't you realize that? Bartolome hesitated and studied his visitors' faces for a minute. Yes, of course, he said. At almost 40, he wouldn't be taken for a fool. So, Brother Francisco continued, thoughtfully stroking his chin and pacing about the room. He glanced first at the sagging mahogany bookshelf, then at a colorful mappamundi, which portrayed the recently explored land of Vespucci's America, and finally back at the cluttered desk where the target of his diatribe sat, squirming in his seat. So then, why do you allow some of them to be treated as something less than God's children, created in his holy image? And worse yet, you grow rich doing so. You forget, brother, Bartolome said, rejoining the conversation. I am not a Dominican, nor do I ever wish to take your harsh vows. I am held to a different standard. It was true. He lived by a different standard altogether. Bartolome had a nice estate. His mind wandered to the bedroom, the fine shutters with tying curtains to keep mosquitoes out, the dining room with doilies and orange and green ceramics imported from Valencia and Faenza. Who do you think you are? Do you think you are glorifying God this way? Friar Francisco said, grabbing a blue ceramic vase from a shelf and brandishing it as if he would dash it to pieces on the study's floor. Have you not read in Ecclesiasticus, where it is written that to offer a sacrifice of the fruit of iniquity is to make a stained offering? You should be beating your breast in contrition. It's only a matter of time before that silver-tongued Cortes moves to terra firma 800 leagues to the west, and it starts all over again. He paused, seeming to search for another tactic, and Bartolome heard waves crashing on the beach, a sure sign of a storm. Montesinos is a powerful man with friends in high places. Don't doubt that a well-placed letter from him could have you stripped of all that you own, or even... What are you talking about? Bartolome bounded to his feet, and his chair clattered against the blue and green tiles of the floor. He could feel a pounding in his temples, an old familiar sensation. I am a good master, and I've never killed any of my slaves. He felt a long repressed howl welling up inside. How dare you come to me to rail about this? I've seen what our men are doing back in Santo Domingo. I once saw a group of Indian children bleeding to death in a stream, their hands cut off by our soldiers. Their crime? Not gathering enough gold. Have you been there to see it? Or have you been hiding out in your little school in the hills? Silence descended over the room like a shroud. A mosquito buzzed in Bartolome's ear, and he slapped at it, a violent smack against the moist side of his face. How dare you, Dominicans, whose midnight order runs the Inquisition itself, cast your stones on the likes of me? Am I not an upright man? The voice of Christ indeed. Friar Francisco took a step back, his mouth wide with disbelief, while Friar Pedro glowered like an angry schoolmaster, unsure of how to handle an unruly pupil. For one wild moment, Bartolome thought of chasing them out of there with his walking stick of gnarled wood. Instead, he righted his chair and sat, his face in his hands. Finally, Bartolome stared at the three monks once again, while the other two now looked at the white tiled floor. Old Friar Bernardo stood looking absently out the window, his bright eyes under gray brows, perhaps gazing at the fields and sea below. Bartolome wondered if, after his outburst, the men would finally leave him in peace. Bartolome heard the waves crash once again on the beach, and the coqui frog cried again. Finally, Friars Pedro and Francisco exchanged a look. The latter was about to speak when Friar Bernardo silenced him, and at last turned fully to face Bartolome. Friar Bernardo's hands soon rested gently on the desk, nimbly supporting the weight of his meager body. He had a light gray beard, and what little hair he had left on his tonsured crown was completely gray as well. He had a kind smile, and it struck Bartolome that the man's twinkling dark eyes seemed almost of the Orient. He wondered if the monk was descended from Moors, or perhaps Jewish conversos. He would have to write his uncle to inquire. People had always wondered at Bartolome's lineage, as he had dark skin and eyes almost like those of Friar Bernardo. Friar Bernardo studied Bartolome for a moment, and then said in a very low voice, so low, in fact, that Bartolome was unsure if the other monks could hear. You know, there are all kinds of people in this world, Bartolome, and God's love can only reach some of them. For many, far too many, the seeds of God's love falls on the stones of their hearts, never to have the chance to sprout. For others, a smaller number, God's love sends seeds that do sprout and take root, only to be devoured by the birds of evil that destroy all hope of an abundant harvest. This displeases God immensely, because so many plants could have grown had they been tended with care. Bartolome sat looking at Friar Bernardo as he thought of what to say. The monk's two companions were now mercifully silent as they hung back near the large pine armoire that Bartolome had ordered from the Canary Islands 3 years before. The old monk continued speaking a moment later, this time quoting Ecclesiastes. He said, "All things are wearisome, more than one can express. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, or the ear filled with hearing." Friar Bernardo stood for a long moment, looking as if he were choosing his words carefully. Then he leaned toward Bartolome, as if the two men were conspiring in a plot, his voice a mere whisper. The younger priest leaned forward to hear what the old Dominican had to say. "There are others," Bernardo said, weighing every word. "There are others, fewer still, so tragically few, in whose hearts there is fertile soil, abundant soil, deep and rich, in which beautiful things can grow. It is in these hearts that great things are possible. Gifts which it is a sin not to use for the glory of God and the salvation of all." The old monks studied Bartolome, their eyes locked. Bartolome felt he should respond, so he said, "Well, what is it that you want from me, then?" Perhaps, if he pretended to agree, they would go away and leave him to do as he would. Bernardo nodded and smiled at Bartolome before saying, "Sometimes you have to lose everything before you can gain something." As Bartolome wondered at this, the monk added, "Our Lord said that what we do to the least of our brothers, we do also to him. Do not forget it." He turned away then, and, as if on cue, his two companions followed him to the corridor. "You will soon receive a visitor, my brother," he said, half turning as he reached the doorway. "He is an old man, poor and sick. He is, in fact, not going to last long. He has much to tell you and much to teach. Allow him into your home and into your heart. Be a good Samaritan and listen to his story. He is known as Rodrigo Bermejo. You will know him when you see him." "But Bartolome began. Brother Bernardo silenced him with a look. "Domini vobiscum," the older man said in the time-honored way of taking leave, his dark, knowing eyes twinkling a bit again. "Et cum spirito tuo," Bartolome answered with a sigh. It was only after the monks had left that Bartolome realized that the weather was calm, and that no storm would come after all. Okay, and that's chapter 1 of Rodrigo's Land. You can Google it. Thanks for listening. If you like, if you like, you can leave some comments down below, or if you'd like to hear more, just let me know in the comment section, and I will keep reading if people would like me to. All right, this novel I published a few years ago. I'm not doing revisions to it, so I'm not really asking for feedback, really. But I hope you like it, and let me know in the comment section if you'd like me to keep reading. All right, again, Rodrigo's Land by Stephen Farrington, by me. I have an author's page on Facebook that you can like. You can share the video if you enjoyed this. If you this is kind of a teaser for now. And again, you can, if you'd like to support me as an artist, you can find Rodrigo's Land just through Amazon, and also through the Kindle ebook. Okay, thanks very much for listening, and have a great day and a great night. I'm Steve Farrington. Thanks a lot. Bye.